Hey, welcome back to the channel everyone, Cal here. Today's video is going to be something I haven't done in a hot minute. Due to the great exotic famine of winter 2018, I too have been suffering from poor exotic RNG. Somehow, however, I've managed to land myself two brand new Forsaken exotics recently, the Black Talon and Gwisin Vest, so today we're going to be reviewing Gwisin Vest. I gotta be honest, when this dropped for me, it was bittersweet. Sweet because I was excited to see something, anything new, but I dreaded playing as a Night Stalker in order to use it. I had leveled the Wraith up already, but I was barely practiced in getting Flawless Execution to activate. I only hear bad things about its super attacks not registering properly, and confirmed that. And on top of all that, I think exotics that only help your super game are pretty much a waste of an exotic slot. I also hadn't heard very much about Gwisin Vest, positive or negative, mostly just apathetic reviews, but for now it's the only new armor piece I got, so I thought, screw it, I'll force myself to learn Way of the Wraith and give it a shot. And boy, let me tell you, were my low expectations not only exceeded, I was pleasantly surprised, so let me tell you why. Now, I already mentioned it, but let me get into what I was talking about with super game exotics. Before anybody starts screaming Ursa Furiosa or Shards of Galanor are OP, generally speaking, exotics that modify your supers, Skull of Daihara Ahamkara or Eternal Warrior for example, have never really been all that useful, at least in the PvP arena, which, if you couldn't tell by now, is more my cup of tea. Take any given Crucible match, and you'll find that only 10% of the time will you be in super mode. The other 90% is all the other stuff. You know, shooting guns, throwing grenades, punching people in the face, etc. So why is that important to consider? Well, that means that an exotic armor piece like Raid Influx, while incredibly valuable in other specific situations, is also only going to be in use 10% of the time. Other exotics like Stompies or Frosties are, however, in use the entirety of the remaining 90%, therefore giving you much more bang for your buck. I'd made my own 4-tier list a few months back that sort of gives a rough criteria with which to measure how useful an exotic armor piece will be, Tier 1 being the best and 4 the least best. I don't necessarily want to say worst, because Forsaken now has changed things quite dramatically for certain super game exotics. Remember how I said that 10% of the match is super game? Well, that number can now be adjusted quite a lot. Let's say you stacked on 5 super mods, ran a shotgun with pump action, legs with the dynamo perk, all on top of Shards of Galanor. You'll be seeing your blade barrage come back absurdly fast. Like, broken, enjoy it while it lasts before Bungie fixes it kinda broken. Looking back at my list, it's impossible to say exotics like Galanor are among the same class as something like Eternal Warrior. But I digress, because I've now just realized that I've been going on and on this entire time without ever really mentioning what Gwisin Vest even does. So we'll get back to its place on that tier list later. Its main perk is simple, yet effective. While in Super, whenever you go invisible after a kill, we'll call that Wraith mode, Gwisin Vest will refund you a substantial chunk of super energy, making it last much longer than normal. It sounds kinda confusing, so let's break it down in action. Remember that when you're in Wraith mode, your energy drains very slowly. But once you break cover to attack, the energy bar drops like a lead weight.
Stay strong. Don't see loss.
You want to stay in Wraith mode until you're relatively close to an enemy, strike them, and then immediately go back into Wraith mode to activate the exotic. The point is that when you go Wraith, Gwisin is there to give much more leeway time to plan your next move. Hell, sometimes you'll drop 2 or 3 people and have enough energy to make your way undetected all the way to the opposite side of the map to shank another 2 or 3. When that happens to you, Gwisin Vest will feel 100% worth it.
Now you're fighting with heart, Guardian. You're catching up. Close the gap. 2 for 1. 3 opponents down.
Going Wraith is really the crux of the matter. It's the difference between whether you feel this super is amazing or not. That and, well, when the hit registration works, because when it doesn't, it's rage fuel to say the least.
Gains the lead.
There are some quirks to learn in order to make the most out of the super, even without Gwisin Vest on, and there's a few guides out there, but in case you haven't seen any, here's a short rundown on how to most efficiently use Spectral Blades. The number one most important tip, it's worth repeating, you should be in Wraith mode as much as possible. If you're not spending the majority of the time of this super invisible, and instead you spam the melee button like a maniac, then you're using the subclass wrong. This is not Blade Dancer, you have to erase that mindset. Because your energy drains fast when you strike, you don't want to run around while completely visible and on radar. The point is to stalk your prey. You're also pretty squishy. Spectral Blades do come with some armor, but not all that much. If someone sees you coming and they have a full auto shotty, you're toast. Tip number 2. Take note of enemy positions first and then cut the cattle. Having true sight is invaluable. This will tell you who to engage with first. If you've never heard of cattle cutting before, it's the cowboy sport where a rider and horse work to isolate a calf away from its herd for as long as possible. Sure, you can go all out in a group, but sometimes the group will turn on you and mow you down with shotguns. A lot of the time it's better to creep up on that one guy who doesn't have a clue you're coming. Don't attempt to chase someone down who knows that you're after them. Spectral Blades is not good at catching up to people, only catching them off guard. Also, giving callouts to your teammates about enemy locations is always a good idea.
They're down below.
Tip 3. Remember this combo. Jump, light attack, heavy attack. Sentinel Titans are pretty familiar with this technique. It's one of the best ways to close the gap quickly on an opponent. When it comes to Spectral Blades, it also, for whatever reason, feels like it's the best way to ensure its melee attacks actually connect. The heavy R2 attack functions as both a way to lunge forward, as well as going Wraith in the process. Sometimes the light attack is what kills the opponent, but not always, so I perform this combo just in case and find it to be the most effective. Less important things to remember: A, you can't spam attacks to travel mid-air. B, if you know you don't have enough energy to get a kill, use your remaining time as a Wraith to position yourself safely in cover. And C, always try performing a flawless execution to sneak up close before popping your super. If you can master all these tips and techniques, you'll make the most out of Way of the Wraith. Now, going back to ranking Gwisin Vest. Yes, this only affects your super game, but that's really the only drawback to using this chess piece. In my eyes, Gwisin exists somewhere in the halfway point between a useless exotic like Eternal Warrior and a broken one like Galanor. Is it as essential as the bread and butter Stompies? No, it won't be replacing those as the go-to anytime soon. But Gwisin Vest certainly achieves what it sets out to do. The only things holding it back are the problems that plague the super itself, so hopefully Bungie fixes those soon. And that'll about cover it. I guess we could consider this not only a review, but also a guide. I hope y'all enjoyed it and found it helpful. If you did, please consider Please consider subscribing to my channel and liking the video. I'd greatly appreciate it. Try the super out and these recommendations, even if you don't have Gwisin Vest, and then come back and let me know in the comments how that worked out for you. Also, be on the lookout for a review of the curated Twilight Oath sniper rifle soon. It's a doozy. This has been Cal. Have a good one.